Welcome, everyone, to the Firing the Man podcast. On today's episode, we are joined by Mike Jackness. Mike has been in the e-commerce space for over a decade and has a wealth of experience in e-commerce, marketing, SEO, and much more. Mike currently owns and operates several businesses in the e-commerce space and has been a featured speaker and presenter for countless events over the past several years. You might have heard Mike on his own podcast, Ecomcrew, where he and Dave Bryant have created a unique and transparent environment where they open the hood and share everything that's working for them and what's not. This is an episode you will certainly not want to miss. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Looking forward to it. I sound much more impressive in that intro than I really am. So hopefully I won't let anybody down that's listening today.
Oh, well, very good. Very good. Well, let's start off this interview with a little bit of background on your story and what led you to first e-commerce and then continuing on with e-commerce.
Yeah, this used to be a very short thing when I was younger, but as I've gotten older, this explanation gets longer and longer. The shortest answer I can really give is I really was an entrepreneur out of the womb. My dad's an entrepreneur, and I kind of grew up in that environment. I was not very good at school or in school. I just looking back at it now, I realize that it was probably like ADD type issues that weren't really talked about or diagnosed back at that time. And I would just be bored and be sleeping in class because I kind of got things on the first explanation and then just kind of drifted off and just never really did well in school. And so I knew that I was going to have to figure out something I could do on my own at a very early age. I knew that college wasn't going to be the thing. I wasn't going to become a doctor or a lawyer. So my first business was actually doing computer consulting right out of high school. I went and bought a pager back when those were a thing and some business cards and just, talk to people on my street and anybody that I knew in my network that I was doing computer services. This was back at a time where personal computers in the house were kind of brand new. And I'm starting to show my age here a little bit. And made a little business out of it and did pretty well with it, actually. And the long and short of it is that eventually one of my clients, because I eventually got into doing some business work over some of the years, one of my clients offered me a job that I took, and I did for 7 years. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But I enjoyed most of it, and in that experience, learned quite a bit, a lot of things that I was able to apply to my future businesses. Eventually, the entrepreneurial bug really kind of reared its head, and so in 2004, I left that job and started my own business doing affiliate marketing, and taken a sabbatical or two in between all that. And actually doing affiliate marketing is what led me into doing e-commerce. We own treadmill.com that we bought to do as an affiliate site. And on a hike one day, I decided that I didn't want to really be an affiliate marketer anymore. I wanted to try to get ahead of what became, it's interesting, I was kind of ahead of the curve on Google, thinking badly of just generally of affiliate sites. And so we ended up drop shipping fitness equipment, and that was our first foray into e-commerce. And all those years later, here we are.
Awesome. So yeah, thanks for sharing your story, Mike. And I want to kind of highlight that point where you had mentioned some of your earlier experience from corporate or from your other jobs kind of helped you along on your journey. Now, can you speak to that a little bit? And also, say if someone's listening and they're thinking about starting a business, maybe speak to that, how they can use their experience there and kind of propel them into maybe what space they're going to go into next. Or
yeah, absolutely. It's interesting how in life you might be learning things that you don't even realize you're learning, and that was certainly the case there. It was a growing company. When I started, I think I was employee 30 or 28 or something in that range, and when I left, we had over 200 people in offices all over the country. And I was on the executive team and was a pretty integral part of the inner workings of that growth. And as someone that was in the IT department, my department was kind of wrapped up in all the operations of the business. So HR and things of this nature, accounting, all of us worked together in unison to help grow this business. And seeing that stuff as a fly on the wall, again, I never expected to have to take care of HR issues in my life or accounting or some of the structural things that happen in a business as it's growing. But I sure did, as I have my own company. And that corporate politics stuff that you see happen, and just kind of like the petty stuff that happens as a company gets bigger on the inside, helped me understand and prepare for it when it happened in our own company. Being aware of HR things and being aware of accounting and other things really helped as I was going through it in my own businesses, and just having some of that maturity and knowledge that I wouldn't have had I started those companies when I was 18. And it's just one of those things where, again, I didn't even think about that type of thing as I was growing into that. And so, I mean, if you're thinking about starting your own thing, if you're at a job right now, uh, I would encourage you to think of some of the positives that are there, and try to learn as much as you can before you do leave, because it can be a really good learning environment. And the reason I eventually left is I felt like I wasn't really learning or growing anymore. I kind of had reached the peak of my potential there. A lot of it was because the company wasn't really growing anymore. And what I realized was that, like, the reason I stayed there, even though I'm more entrepreneurial and prefer not to work for somebody, is that it had a very entrepreneurial flair and environment. I mean, it was that infectious buzz that's in the office as a company is growing that you experience yourself in your own businesses. I was experiencing that somewhere else. And so eventually that kind of ran its useful life. And that was one of the reasons I left.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. So let's pivot a little bit and let's talk profits. That's why we're all doing kind of what we're doing.
Yeah.
At least it drives what we're doing. And so specifically for like Amazon sellers, e-commerce sellers, profit margin is like really, really crucial. And so can you kind of share with the audience, like, do you have any rules on, like, if you're launching a product and you're going to sell at retail price this, what should you land it for? What should the margins be? Things like that. And how do you back into that?
If you would have asked me this 10 years ago, I would have probably given you a slightly different answer. I think that, again, everything's kind of a growing and learning experience. Certainly understood profit and margins and et cetera before I got into e-commerce. My previous life was affiliate marketing, where like margins are like 95%. Like there's just no expenses, right? It was kind of like money was falling out of the sky, and I didn't know where the hell it was coming. It was just kind of an interesting time in my life. But the e-commerce is a much different animal. And so to the answer to the question is, whatever you're buying it for from your manufacturer, the absolute least you need to mark it up is like 4x. So if you're buying something for $10, you need to be selling it retail for 50, or for 40, I mean, but 50 is even better. So 5x is even better. And the reason that it's important to make sure that you have that padding is that things change. And so like when I first started getting involved, like 3x was actually pretty doable. And that's really the target that we had, where if we bought it for 10, we could sell it for 30. But the math doesn't work any longer. Things have changed. Advertising's gotten way more expensive. There's now import duties that we have to contend with. Shipping and logistics is just a complete wreck. And so it's much more expensive to get the stuff in. Amazon continues to raise their fees at every possible opportunity that they have to do this. People expect more out of you now as a business than they ever had before in terms of returns and customer service and all of these things. And so making sure you have the margin to withstand all of these curveballs that are going to be coming at you inevitably from every direction. This is not a unique time. That's, to be thinking, this is always going to be this way in any business you run, in any industry. You have to be prepared for these things. It's kind of one of these things I've learned over 20 years of being in business. And so we really look at margin as a non-starter, right? If we can't source at those margins, we do not go, man, well, I already put a bunch of work into this, and I'm going to be really disappointed that we aren't going to launch this. And so I'm going to do it anyway, because I've already come this far. Well, that just means that you're going to be even more upset later. So it's easier to make the hard decision now than the harder decision later.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is so true. David and I were in that conversation a few weeks ago where, I was vying to push a product, and he's like, the numbers don't match. And so it's like you mentioned, Mike, it would create headaches down the road if you go forward if the numbers don't match. So awesome.
Nothing ever gets cheaper, right? Like it isn't like someone ever comes to you and goes like, I'm going to give you a break on this now, right? It's always more. And so you have to be prepared for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
As a follow-up to that, when I'll give an example of shipping containers, when they go from 3,000 to 20,000, a portion, that cost needs to be passed on to the customer. One thing you hear a lot of Amazon sellers talk about is a hesitant, like, if I increase my price by $5, I'm going to lose ranking. But at some point you need to, especially as costs shift. And we've seen that a lot in 2021. And so when you have a product and the costs are changing, what is your approach to those price increases? Are you doing it all at once? Are you, is it a stair step? What do you do there?
Well, this is where you're going to find out how transparent I am, because I'll just embarrass myself with this answer. We waited way too long, as you already kind of alluded to. Like, everyone's scared to do it, right? I mean, and we were too, to start raising prices, because Amazon is such a flywheel centric platform that losing even one sale a day can hurt you and hurt your organic rankings. And no one else was raising their price. I think we're all in the same position, sitting in our offices or in our mom's basement or wherever we're running our businesses from, and having the same dilemma of like, holy crap, man, like, costs are going up everywhere. I feel like it's been the year of a death by 1,000 paper cuts. What do I do? And eventually, quite frankly, the reason we started raising prices, because I just felt like I was backed in the corner and had no other choice. Just like, either we do this or go out of business, or we don't, we go out of business. But either way, like, we got to raise our price. Like, it was just like literally down to that point. And like I said, I'm a little bit ashamed to kind of admit that, because the result that happened was that it wasn't that bad. We raised our price and sales didn't go down. They actually went up in a lot of cases, which was really weird. When I say a lot of cases, not every case. Like, there are definitely, we have a pretty diverse line of products and a pretty diverse portfolio of products. And so not everything's going to respond the same way, right? So like some products, we raised the price a penny and the rankings tanked. It's kind of terrifying. But other products we raised by now 30, 40%, and they're selling just as many units as they ever have. There's also the whole phenomena of you may actually make more money selling fewer units. A lot of us get hooked up on the number of units that we're selling or the number of dollars that we're selling, and often don't think about the profit, the bottom line number first. And so an example of this is like, if you have a product that you're selling for $100 and you're making 20% margin on it, you're making $20. If you raise the price by $10, now your profit margin's $30. You just raised your price 10%, but your margin, your net margin, is up 50%. And it's not quite exactly that. I get that, because there's a 15% fee that Amazon's going to take. That's really the only additional fee that you're paying to get that extra $10 in sales. It's that $1.50. Like, the fulfillment fee is the same. The cost to get the customer is the same. So like, really $8.50 flows to the bottom line, and you've increased your margins by 40%. And what happened to us in reality was that, like, our margin was no longer 20%. It had gone down to like 4% because of all these things that we were talking about. And so again, it was kind of like, we're backed in this corner. What are we going to do? And so by raising our prices, we got the margins back up, and we're still pushing the envelope to see where we can get. But if there's any one takeaway from this, I would encourage people to not be as frightened as I was to start raising prices.
Okay. To round out this conversation on sales price, are you split testing price with any software? Like, I was using Profit Peak. Jungle Scout had a tool called Profit Peak.
Mm-hmm. We use Profit Peaks from Splitly. I'm good friends with Greg over at Jungle Scout. I think they've actually retired that software now, so I don't believe it even exists anymore. And Amazon's never going to have this split testing feature for this, right? They release split testing for your images and for your title, which is awesome, and it's I encourage people to check that out. But they're never going to do this for pricing. And so until a tool exists, the way that we've been doing it is it's kind of funny. A lot of things have ended up back on Google Sheets or Excel. It's you look for software to solve all these things, and you sign up for all this SaaS, and all these years later, now we're like going back to like to the old days and doing things on Google Sheets or Excel. And so what our team's doing, first and foremost, we start with a baseline. And so we took the price that we were selling it for, noted that. We noted what our BSR was, our bestseller ranking in the category, which I think is an important distinction. in our subcategory that product is in. So let's say ice packs or gloves or trekking poles, whatever it might be, that category, which is the important number to me, right? It's like, how are your sales relative to everybody else in the category? You can't look at just the number of units you're selling on a daily or weekly basis, because there's so much variance in that anyway. Like, you can change nothing and that number goes all over the place. And so looking at that, I think, is a mistake, because you might raise your price and see your sales go down, panic, and you're going to just have a false positive of like, I raised my price and that's why something went wrong, when you would have just probably had less sales that week anyway. And so we're looking at BSR as our matrix. Now, we do look at sales as well, but I think the BSR number is probably the thing we put the most weight in. And so then what we do is we set a target price of where we like that item to get to. And for everyone, that's going to be different. The way that we started that was, okay, again, death by 1,000 paper cuts. Let's put Band-Aids on everything and let's get back to where, like, imagine we were where we were before, at this same margin. What would that price have to be? So if we want to make 20% net in today's dollars, in today's world of higher shipping costs and higher Amazon fees and higher COGS and everything else, what does that need to be? Let's let that be our target. And so that's what we set as our target column. And then each week we started raising the price, trying to get towards that. Depending on the price of the item, we might raise it a dime or a quarter or $1. We never would do more than $1. So for like higher priced items, we would move $1 at a time. It doesn't make sense to go from $90 or $89.99 to like $90.09, right? That's kind of ridiculous. But to go from $9.99 to $10.09, just to see what happens when you like break that threshold of that, it has some argument to it. And I'm not saying there's any one right way. This is just the way that we approached it. And so each week, we would then go back a week later and look at what our BSR is now. Has the nightmare happened of BSR is just tanked and the business blew up like we feared? And 90-something% of our catalog, after we did this the first week, the answer was no, nothing went wrong. And in a lot of cases, sales actually went up. And we anticipate this or think that this phenomena is because when you change your price and someone's had it in their cart, they will get a message saying this price has changed. And it kind of like nudges them a little bit to go buy. And so like that first week, you get this like uplift of that kind of makes it look maybe a little bit better than it is. And we kind of anticipated that and saw that. But then we would let things kind of settle down for a week or two and then raise the price a little bit more, each week tracking the BSR. And again, if we saw it going the wrong direction, we'd stop and analyze. But if it didn't go the wrong direction, why not keep going? Why not go up another dime or another quarter or another $1 until we hit the target price? And now what's actually happened is either we've hit the target price on like 85% of our catalog, which is or we haven't. Now we've set an even higher price. Like we're going even further with this. And for those of you watching on video, I have a visitor here. My dog just walked in. This is the thing of working at home. It's about the time of the day where he likes to go out for a WALK. So he'll just have to,
nice.
He'll have to wait for that.
He knows the word too. I have a bulldog, and I cannot say it. I have to spell that out.
You have to spell it out. Yeah, it's pretty funny. But yeah, so that's what we've ended up doing. And again, I mean, we've been able to push the envelope on this pretty significantly, and it's really reinvigorated our business. It's basically saved a dying business, for lack of a better way of putting it. And we're back in a good spot again now, and not as afraid to mess with this stuff because it wasn't as scary as I thought.
That's good to hear. That's good. Personally, that's good to hear. And I think it's good to hear for our listeners. And
this is across hundreds of SKUs and 5 brands. So this is not like an isolated thing. This has been, across everything for us.
Yeah, there's some real statistical significance there. So
exactly. Yeah.
So sticking with this profit margin theme, episode 432 of the Ecomcrew Podcast, which this is an excellent one that all of our listeners should go check out. It was titled Mike and Dave's Business Review 2021. And you discuss your brands and some of the key moves that you made throughout the year. And one of the things that you commented on was getting PPC spend dialed in. And so my question is, when you are looking at a brand, what does that process look like?
Well, it's been the amazing journey of PPC over a long period of time. it's interesting. We were just talking about another phenomenon in our business where you're scared to make changes, right? It's like, if I do XYZ to my PPC, what is that going to do to my organic sales or just my sales overall? And so you can be a little bit frightened to do this. There's also been different thought processes from different thought leaders, including myself. I mean, I'll be the first one to admit that I am hypocritical as it can be when it comes to this, because or two-faced as much as possible on this, because I've had different opinions about this over the years. And one of the thoughts I used to have was we should spend as much as possible on PPC to get as many sales through PPC as we could, as long as we were breaking even on it. Like, those are just good sales to get. And what I really realized that was a very flawed thought process. Best of intentions, horribly flawed thought process. First of all, like, you wouldn't do this with anything else in your life or in your business. Like, if someone said, like, if you give me $1, I'll give you $1 back. Like, why the heck would you be doing that? It makes no sense. I mean, unless there's like a good reason or something, but the reason was flawed. It also sends a lot of, I think, really bad and false signals to Amazon. If you're operating in that range of ACOS or tacos or whatever acronym of the day we want to use for PPC, statistically, what that means is that those words are converting worse than your organic rankings, and you're showing Amazon, I think, some poor signals. And so what we've really tried to dial in is, getting our ACOS coming down as kind of a result of, like, we want our conversion rate on the keywords that we're doing to be as good or better than the organic rankings that we're looking for themselves. And so, like, if you're overbidding on PPC, that means you're getting more clicks than you should from people that are searching for things that aren't really related to your product. And this really can be exacerbated by, like, broad match or auto type campaigns, right? Where, like, if you're just like, if you sell ice packs as a for instance, which we do, well, our ice packs are health related. They're not cooler related, like what you would put in your ice chest. And so people just typing in ice packs are giving a bunch of false signals to Amazon and lowering our conversion rate on things that we do want to convert for and we do want to rank for. Why are we paying to, like, show people who are looking for an ice pack for their cooler our product? They're never going to buy it. It's just a bunch of waste of money. And so by adding a bunch of negative keywords and really dialing in our spend, we've been able to reduce our ACOS, reduce our tacos, and make ourselves a much more profitable business. And the thing that's really interesting is that it's been helping, not hurting, our organic rankings. And this is something we've been tracking pretty closely. And so, like, when I look at our business, one of the things that we have a weekly score sheet that we look at for all kinds of things. And one of the things we look at on a SKU basis is percentage of sales from organic and percentage of sales from PPC. And now our percentage of sales from organic is increasing, and percentage of sales from PPC has been decreasing. And so, like, when we're launching a product and there's a reason to be, like, overspending because you don't have any visibility yet, that's a different story, right? I don't want to group that in that circumstance in with this, but I'm talking about aged products that you're just wasting a bunch of dollars on. And again, every dollar that you stop saving on PPC is just $1 right back to the bottom line, right? It's from a profitability standpoint, this is one of the few levers you can control in e-commerce. There's not a lot of them, so this is one of the few things you can control. And so we've worked pretty hard on this, and I'm pleased with the results.
Okay. So you had talked about trimming spend, and Ken and I looked at a marketplace pulse survey the other day. Not survey, but it was some stats that said CPC was up 30% in 2021. And so, we have trimmed spend in our own businesses and seen similar results. My question to you, as you trim spend, have you found a better spot to park those dollars in terms of a return on investment?
We haven't. I haven't even really thought of it in terms of that. I think of it in terms of, like, we were just wasting money, and not in terms of, like, oh, now I can go put this money somewhere else. Unfortunately, there really isn't a lot of other things you can do, like when it comes to the Amazon marketplace, in terms of advertising. Like, you can do some Google PPC tricks and advertise on Facebook to a landing page and some other things. But all these things have been proven that they're not very cost effective, including by ourselves. And so, I mean, we are investing in other things, but I don't think of it in terms of silos of like, okay, I've now saved $1,000 a month. I'm going to go spend that directly on something else. And the thing that we've really been investing in is building off Amazon assets, content sites and things of this nature that rank organically on Google that can help push traffic to Amazon. So we could argue that maybe we're taking that money that we're saving from PPC and investing more in that, but I don't necessarily think of it in those terms personally. I just think of it in terms of how am I going to survive as an Amazon seller when there's money to be made here. I've seen this same phenomena happen in all the other businesses that I've done, this life cycle of like people are piling in because it's deemed to be this easy place to make money, even though we all know that that's not the case. And so lots of people are flocking there, and a lot of them are going to be willing to do all the black hat stuff. Just statistically, there's going to be a contingent of people that are going to do that stuff. Like, how do you compete against them in a white hat way? Well, it's pretty difficult. So, I mean, the thing that we've done is I think about the harder work, the long-term thing, which is those off Amazon content type sites that are going to ride the storm of these types of black hat issues.
Very nice. Very nice. And this is my last question on PPC, and then I'm going to kick it over to Ken. So this is very helpful. To apply some numbers to this, say we have $10 sales price. Our fully loaded cost after you account for everything is $7. So we have a 30% profit margin. And let's say it's 50-50 organic and PPC. How would you approach that as you are looking at your spend?
The number that we've really dialed in on is this tacos number. So total cost of sales. And so we're looking at company-wide, we look at the high number, the high level number. We also get down into the SKU number of this. But what we've really found, again, this is one of the benefits of running multiple businesses across different product lines. The number that we really kind of dialed in on is 8%. I don't know if this is perfect for everyone, but for us, for every $100 in sales we get, we feel like we should be spending $8 in PPC as a company. And then we dial that in on a SKU level as well. What I found is that if it's lower than that, we're spending too little and not getting all the exposure that we should. And if it's more than that, then our profitability erodes. And where it really falls off the cliff is at 12%. And so I think you can be higher than 8, but if you're looking at a graph of your profitability on a chart, it'll really tail off when it gets past 12%. And it's not linear, because again, every dollar you spend has this magnified effect on net. And so as you spend more, like your profit margin will tail off really quickly. And so past 12%, we find that we got to make some hard choices and decisions and tone it down. And again, we were scared to do this. Same exact situation with pricing. It's like, oh my God, what happens now? We're in a bad spot. We're going to make it worse by doing this. And until we were really backed in the corner and had to make the tough decision because we had no other choice. Like, I don't have a rich uncle, and I don't think you guys are going to give me a bunch of free money. So, we just met each other. So you gotta make the tough choices sometimes, right? And that was really where this was born out of, and really lit a fire in our butts to think about things differently.
I appreciate you applying a number to it, because I have asked this question to a lot of people, and oftentimes the response is, well, it depends on the product and the brand. And I would disagree. I
definitely disagree.
And
I would love to challenge anybody. We can talk about it. I'd love to get a panel together of 100 different sellers and have this conversation. And I would be willing to bet that if it's above 12%, you're struggling to be profitable.
I agree. I agree with that. And that range is very helpful to our listeners. So thank you for that. Over to you, Ken.